guys, welcome back. I want to do a really quick little video today where we're talking about some frequently asked questions about this thing which is sitting next to me, the Fractal AX8. I do a lot of videos on my channel demonstrating presets and a lot of the cool functions you can do with the unit, and I seem to get a lot of the same questions over and over again, so I want to address some of them. I've written them down right here so that I can remember them and read them. The first thing is, what's XY switching for? How does it work? And what the hell do I use it for? And the idea being that in the AX8 you're presented with this grid where you can basically put stuff anywhere, kind of like it's like the ultimate switching system, or rack system where you can place your amp, your cab, your effects wherever you like them and route them however you like them. One of the limitations for the AX8, because it's designed to be used on the floor without any external cooling, is that they use slightly less powerful DSP chips, meaning that you've got slightly less power, meaning again that's a lot of layers of meaning. This is like Inception here. Basically means you've got less CPU to work with. So one way to get around that is, say you want two different delay sounds, like a lead delay and a rhythmic delay or something like that with a different amount of mix. And you also want them to be different sounding delays. So you want the lead delay to be like a tape delay, and you want the rhythmic delay to be something like a Memory Man kind of edge style sounding thing. So one thing you can do there is, rather than have two delay blocks, which the extra delay block is going to eat up CPU, you might want to use that for a reverb or another drive pedal or something like that. You use one delay block and you can set it to two completely different types of setting. You obviously can't use them in conjunction with one another, but you can swap from one to another. For example, my lead delays on my main preset is just a bit of tape delay. So there's a rhythm sound. If I turn the delay on, that sounds pretty cool. But then if I hold down the delay button, it will switch to the Y state, which is a rhythmic delay, set to a dotted eighth and a quarter. Lead, hold it down. So that's pretty cool. That saves you a little bit of CPU. It makes your sort of workflow a little bit easier, and the XY state can be assigned to a particular scene. For example, scene 1 might just be a straight rhythm sound with an amp and a cab. Scene 2 might have your rhythmic delay, and scene 3 might switch the delay, turn a drive pedal on or something like that. So going on from that idea is, how do I avoid like a switching gap when I'm going between scenes? This is the most common thing on the AX8 because you can only run one amp at a time. Well, you can only get one instance of the amp block is a better way to say it. So it seems to be the first thing a lot of people do is go, hey, this thing's amazing and I understand XY switching. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to have a Fender Deluxe as my clean sound. I'm going to have a Marshall as my chunky rhythm sound, and I'll play all the clean parts with state X on the amp block, and I'll just switch it to Y. Again, because of the way the architecture works in there, and to avoid any loud pops, and just because of the nature of DSP processing as it is, you're going to get a very, very slight audio lag. There has to be a gap there, otherwise you'll have a pop or a boom or something like that. So one way to get around that is to realize that the foot switches in here, they operate on the upstroke, so when you press them down, you have to wait until you come up for it to activate that switch. That can be turned off in the global menu. Or the other way around it is to find an amp model which on low gain settings gives you a really good clean sound, and on higher gain settings gives you a great lead sound. And you can even design it so that you might have really low gain, gives you a good clean sound, sort of in the middle gives you a good crunch sound, and you can throw a drive pedal or use a control switch to activate the boost function on there. I've got videos on my channel about all this stuff. If you just look up Fractal AX8 tutorials, it's all in there. But that is one way to work around that switching gap. In the AX8 you can have two amps. You can do that seamlessly. It works really, really great. But unfortunately, that's one of the very few limitations there. I actually don't find it much of a limitation, because for playing live anyway, which is the only time this is really going to pop up, I don't want a pristine clean sound. I want something with just a little bit of grit. So using something like the Mesa Mark series, or using a Plexi and attaching a scene controller, which again I've got a video on scene controllers you can check out, to change the gain. It's like having a buddy just go in there, yeah, I need some more, and they'll turn it up for you. So that's the best way to get around that XY switching lag with the amp block. Also, don't just have, you know, the same amp on X and Y, one with more gain and one with less gain, because you'll still get that gap. That seems to be a problem that a lot of people have. All right, moving on. Another question is like, hey, you know, this sounds great DI. Can I also use it with a cab? In fact, can I send a DI signal to front of house from the unit and also send a signal to my cab without the cab sim on? And yeah, the short answer is yes. There's two independent outputs here. All you have to do is, in the grid, is attach an effects loop block before the cab block. So it's really, really simple. You don't normally want the cab sim to be affecting your guitar cabinet. The reason being is, you think of a cabinet like a filter. You're filtering the raw tone coming out of the amp with a cabinet simulation, an impulse response, and then you're filtering it again with your actual real guitar speaker, which, you know, some people might like that. I think it sounds weird. So I've got a bunch of presets you can check out, which if you're on the AX8 or if you're looking up some of my videos, anything that says DI/cab, have a look at the way that is routed. It basically means all you have to do is put the cab block last and an effects loop off parallel to it, and there you go. Yes, you can send cab sim to front of house and an unaffected cab sim to your real cab on stage. I do this all the time and it sounds awesome. The other one, which comes up a lot, is CPU usage and how much stuff you can get happening. For me, my main preset for playing live, I mean, just glancing at it, I have a wah, a pitch block. The pitch block's pretty hungry when it comes to CPU. I have a drive pedal, I have an amp, a stereo cab block, a delay, a rotary speaker emulation, and the looper in there as well, and it handles it with ease. It gets to about 80% CPU. I don't use a reverb block for playing live, basically because you're going to be hearing the sound in the room. But if you're running stuff like in-ears, a reverb block is really, really handy. However, the reverb uses up quite a bit of CPU. So one thing you can do is change the reverb quality setting from high down to normal. That saves you some CPU. And basically, you know, everybody who does this, I really can't hear the difference with this. I think normal sounds fine for most presets. And you can also turn something called the reverb density up or down, which is worth checking out in a couple of videos as well, and that's going to save you CPU. Furthermore, rather than use a drive block, you can use a control switch. If you check out a guy called Glenn DeLorme, he's got some really, really great sounding AX8 presets where he uses a control switch as a lead boost. And I love the tones he pulls, and he's got some really great videos. He's a really great player as well, so maybe check out some of his presets to see how to use the control switch function rather than, you know, using a parametric EQ block as a boost, or rather than using another drive pedal. You can attach the control switch to, you know, do several things at once and save you on CPU. Same thing, you can use a filter block instead of a drive pedal. You can use a filter block instead of a wah if you're really clever. There's plenty of demonstrations of this, but mostly it's just thinking about how to use your rig. If you just throw things on the grid with disregard for the CPU and then get upset about it that, you know, the unit should be designed so that I can do whatever I want, it's not the case. It's designed with limitations. I mean, if you go and buy a 15-watt Fender Blues Junior and you want to take it to a gig where you're not miking up with a really loud drummer and a bass player using an Ampeg SVT, are you going to write to Fender and go, hey, this isn't good enough, you know, I bought an amp and it's not loud enough, and by the way, it doesn't have built-in effects? The units, you know, the AX8 has limitations, and you have to know what the limitations are. And in fact, like a lot of things, having limitations can make you more creative. So embrace those limitations and use them to your advantage, and be creative with your tones rather than just demanding that it can do everything under the sun. Two more little questions. One is the tuner good in the AX8? And a very short answer, yes, it's fine. I don't use an external tuner. Some people have a preference, you know, they like to use a Polytune or a Peterson or something like that. Whatever, it's, you know, I've taken this thing all over, you know, to fly gigs, and small clubs and use it at home and things like that, and the tuner has never let me down. So in short, yes, the tuner is great. And finally, a question I get all the time, because I did a couple of videos with I borrowed a Kemper from a friend of mine who just bought one, and I shot some profiles, and I also profiled my main sound in the AX8, which is a pretty funny little video. You know, like, what should I buy? Should I buy a Kemper or should I buy an AX8? It's like saying, hey Leon, you know, I really like your videos. What sort of underwear should I wear? Boxer shorts or, you know, Y-fronts? You have to try both units and see which one works for you. They both sound really good. The Kemper to me is like, hey, if you just want a really tactile interface and something that works exactly like an amp, and you've got a cabinet that you like, and a bunch of amps that you like, and you kind of want to catalog them or clone them in a really, really good way, get a Kemper. If you want, you know, kind of every amp ever designed, modeled really accurately with a bunch of impulse responses, get a Fractal unit. However, you have to know how all those amps work, which I think is, you know, for a lot of people who use the Kemper units, they know how their Marshall or their Boogie or their Fender work, so when they profile it, you know, they get a pretty accurate representation of what's going on there. You dive into this and you've never used a Mesa Mark II C Plus or a Mark IV before, you know, and you just plug it in, you know, crank the bass up to 8 and, you know, the mids on 6 and the treble on 4 the way you would a Marshall, and it sounds like absolute balls. Go and do some research and figure out how to set those actual amps, which, by the way, probably isn't the way to set a 2C Plus to get a sound that you like. So yeah, it just comes down to what works best for you. I think both units are awesome. I'd love to own both. At the moment, I only own one. I can only kind of justify owning one because you know, I'm not really going to get a chance to use both of them. Maybe if I, you know, pimp out my studio a little bit more, I'll get a Kemper as well, just cause. But I already have a bunch of really loud, ridiculous amps, so it might be cool to, you know, have an accessible way to get them. But until then, the AX8 does it all for me for recording and for playing live. Cool. If you guys have any more questions you would like me to answer, please let me know in the comments and I will get back to them. But for now, that's the first little frequently asked question session. And you know, just because I'm just going to play some more guitar. I was talking about CPU usage earlier. I'm going to turn everything on in this preset. I've got the rotary speaker on, the drive on, the pitch block on. It'll probably sound like absolute rubbish, but I'll play something for you guys. Thanks so much for checking this video out, and please, you know, share it and subscribe.